Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live, and today on a conversation with Floyd Marshall Jr., I am joined by cinematographer extraordinaire Michelle Clementine. She is an award winning cinematographer and only one of a handful of African American Latina cinematographers, which is absolutely amazing. And as always, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe on Apple Podcasts because I want to keep bringing you amazing guests such as Michelle Clementine. And let me tell you how I found her scrolling on Instagram, and I just put in cinematographers and she popped up, and I was so surprised because unfortunately you don't see too many cinematographers of color, and even more importantly you don't see too many women of color in the director of photography field. So when I saw her Instagram, I'm like, oh, I have to get her on the show because we need to talk because I need to find out how she got her start in the business. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this young lady is extremely talented. She's, as I said, she's award winning. So without further ado, welcome Michelle to a conversation with. How are you?
Oh, that was really nice. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. And I was actually really like honored when you reached out to me. I was like surprised. I didn't expect it. And when I looked into you and your work and your channel, I was very like, okay, this is a cool community to be a part of and a nice ask. So thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. And again, I was just scrolling on Instagram because I like finding, interesting people to talk to. And again,
Right.
when I came across your account, I said to myself, I said, oh snap. And then I started scrolling. Of course, you gotta scroll, you gotta see, the pictures. And I'm saying, okay, so she's in this for real, for real. And I really wanted to talk to you because as I said, I don't know of too many female DPs in this business. And I just wanted to have you come on and just talk about your journey and how you could possibly, give advice to any young woman, of any nationality who's deciding that, hey, that's the route I want to go. What does it take to do that? So how did you get started in the film industry? How did that happen?
Well, funny enough, I took a darkroom photography class in high school. And my teachers would tell me, you have a great eye. You should really look into a career in photography. And I remember thinking, that's a white man's sport. I'm not going to do that. And then a few years later, I actually went to Brooklyn College, and um, I wanted to stay close to home. I figured, the best place to learn is New York City itself. And then went to Brooklyn College and kind of did internships all around. And I ended up having an internship at Tribeca Film Festival in like 2002, 2003, something like that. And and I loved it. I did that for a few months, and I said, "Wow, filmmaking seems like a really awesome thing." And I declared film production as my major. And then I hyperventilated and was like, what did I do? What am I doing? Like, and realized this is also a man's sport. And then I thought about it, I was just like, almost every industry is a man's sport. So I'm not going to let that deter me. And from there, I just I PA'd for maybe 2 years, and I was a terrible PA. Like, this was after I graduated. Um, God, I was a terrible PA because I would leave my lockup to go harass the camera guys.
Mm.
And one day, one of the guys was just like, I don't have, it was a 1 day commercial. And he was just like, I don't have time to train you on all the gear. You need to do what all of us do and work at the rental house. And I was like, oh, I had never heard that before. And so, sure enough, in New York, and I guess back in the day, it still applies to New York today, but not so much like LA and other places. But if you work at the rental house, like Aerie or Panavision or something like that, um, it assures you a spot.
Oh no.
It
Oh no.
assures you a spot on the for local 600 camera union, a place to take a test. Where normally you would have to qualify by having enough like 150 or 200 days to submit to the union to then for them to say, okay, you could work on our sets. People don't realize that could take a number of years to even get a credit on a call sheet or a project as in the camera department. And so, yeah, so I got into ARI, I worked there. And after 6 months of working there, I applied to take the union test and I passed, which was a really, really hard test to take. At that point in my knowledge, I didn't really know that much. It was a real crash course. Those first 6 months at ARI. So yeah, I got a place at the union test. I passed, and then from there, I've been freelancing ever since. And I took that test in 2010. From there,
Okay.
I worked my way up as a camera assistant, loader, all that stuff.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the rental house because I was listening to a podcast you did a few years
I lost
ago.
sound. I
You
can't
lost
hear
sound?
you.
You can't hear. Oh, oh. Can you hear me now?
I don't know what just happened.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are having technical difficulties.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
I don't hear you at all.
Hmm. I hear you perfectly clear.
Oh boy. He hears me. I can't hear him. Should I get off and get back on? Okay. Let me try this one more time.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are having some slight technical difficulties. This happens when you're actually streaming live. So if you can be patient, we're going to wait for Michelle to come back. She just came back. So we're going to add her back and we're going to see what. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you perfectly now.
Great. But you know what's interesting? When you were talking for a split second, your screen went black and then it came back on. So
Yeah. Okay.
that may have been when
The
the
kicker.
disconnect occurred. But I was explaining to the now audience and the future audience that this is a live streaming podcast.
It
So
is.
there will be technical difficulties, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're going to get in the film business, these are the things that you're going to have to deal with.
You
But
roll with
back,
it.
yes, absolutely. You do what you got to do. It is what it is. But back to the question that I was going to ask you, the rental house. I had listened to a podcast that you had done previously where you talked about the rental house basically being graduate school without having to pay for it. So, can you explain to the people that may be thinking about going the route of a cinematographer? What really goes on in a rental house and some of the
Mhm.
things that you learned being there.
So I would say cinematography really is a marriage of technical knowledge and taste, right? And what you're sharing when you are a shooter is your perspective, but also your technical savvy. And the more interesting a frame, probably the more depth of your knowledge and of the technical geeky side of it. So it's just like you've got to know the tools at your disposal for any given camera or lens that you have. The way that some people take advantage of, let's say, like Instagram or TikTok or something, and you see how some of these kids like know how to edit it and know how to use that platform. They're using filters, they're using special effects, they're using all the things we use on a big movie set, but in little like stuff in your phone, but in real life it comes from the things that we do on a movie set. So if I know that I want to have uh, an overhead shot looking down 90 degrees, I got to know who to talk to and who to rent from that will give me the gear that I need to effectively get a shot, effectively and safely get a shot like that. You know, if I want to have something start up high and then swoop down low and push in and come back up to your eye level, that is, you know, there's equipment for that. And I got to know what that is and how to make the camera move in a way or do or capture things in a way that I want it to capture, you know? And just having that, working at a rental house is where I'm learning the lenses. I'm learning the mechanics of the camera. I'm learning all of the accessories that go with the camera that can give me certain effects. I'm learning, you know, oh, if I need a zoom lens, what kind of zoom lens? I can have a zoom lens that fits in one hand, or I have a zoom lens that's, you know, 3-4 feet long and, you know, 80 pounds. And if that's going to get me the focal length I want to get to. So it's all of these different things that, you know, and I think the audience, because of social media, have a better grasp of what it takes to make a pretty picture. So a lot of times a pretty picture, I think everybody has an eye now. Everybody has a sort of talent because that's how we're connecting, you know, in more visual ways. So making a pretty picture is honestly the easiest part of the job. It's knowing the technical stuff of why does your camera on your phone know to dim down or brighten up? How does it know to do that? All of that internally is software, but we're doing that externally in firmware. We're adding literal glass in front of the lens to distort or to create softening, you know, and those are filters. Filters that I'm used to is a glass thing that I could touch, not something I could swipe and it smooths out your pretty skin, you know? So it's knowing how to get those things effectively and do those things effectively that going to working at the rental house did for me. It gave me a complete understanding of every piece and component of the camera, how it works and why. And it was great.
Oh, okay. So you were an AC,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I had never heard of that term. So when I heard AC, I said, "Are they talking about an AD?" So I had to look up the term. And when I looked up the term, and I've been in the business for 20 years, never heard that term. But then when I looked it up, I was like, okay, okay. So you learn something new every day. But so you were a second AC, and what did that job entail? And then were you did you move up to a first AC, or did you go from second AC to cinematographer, or did you go from second AC first AC? How did that work? And what is
I
an
have
AC?
yeah. So AC is assistant camera assistant. So I was a camera assistant. I have literally done every. I respect the medium so much, and I wanted to. I think there was a part of me that felt like a little bit apprehensive about my educational background. I didn't go to like a real film school. I didn't graduate from like a graduate school where you go really in depth. It wasn't an NYU, it wasn't an AFI, it wasn't a USC, it was Brooklyn College, you know? And at the time, they were not known for their film program as much, and they were undergoing huge renovations. So our classes were like in this temporary barn that we called at the back of the campus, you know. So it felt really like I just felt like, based on my education and the education level of my peers, that
Okay, she went out
I
again.
think it did it again.
It did it again.
Do you hear me
Can you hear
fine?
me? I can hear you.
Oh, well.
Okay, she's going to go back. She's going to go out. She's going to come back in. This is a phenomenal conversation, ladies and gentlemen. So we are not going to let some slight technical difficulties derail this conversation. So we're going to wait for her to come back. There she is again, and we are adding her back. We're going to keep doing this. I was just telling the audience that we are not going to let these technical difficulties derail this phenomenal conversation that we're having. So please continue.
The technical, huh?
Yes.
We didn't have a checkout or prep before this to really practice it out and see how it goes. So you're getting it raw. but so yeah, so I felt insecure essentially about my education level, and I felt like I need to learn everything. There's
Mhm.
not enough. I don't know anything. I felt like the lack of things that what I didn't know about filmmaking. And I felt like I'm a woman of color. I've got to know everything that there is to know about this. And New York is kind of militant in the sense that, you've got to work as a loader for 5 years before you can even think about becoming a second AC. So all of that was really drilled into me, like just in the camera culture of New York. Um, but then I kind of realized along the way, I'm thinking about all the things that I don't know, but I'm not valuing the things that I do know. And so for the very few people in camera that look like me, I realized I knew a lot that I wasn't giving myself credit. And I started to meet other women in other states and other cities when I was traveling in my work or what in my education, my searching for knowledge. I realized that all of the women around me were admiring me for what I knew, um, not just creatively, but on the technical level. The fact that I knew how to pull focus. Um, there's a lot of women who are second ACs and who are loaders or who are utilities, and it's really hard to get the skill level advanced enough to pull focus. It really is like a science. It really is like, where you were in elementary school or junior high or whatever, and it's just like train A leaves from this point at 8:30 and train B leaves at this time at 70 miles an hour. How fast do they That's the math that I'm doing when I'm pulling focus. It's
Mm.
me sitting on a camera that's maybe on a dolly pushing forward, and then it's Tom Cruise running at the camera. It's things like that, and knowing what that speed is and keeping it in focus throughout the entire movement. That's what being a camera assistant is. The camera operator, you have all the fun. You're pointing the camera. You're not dealing with all the politics of the job. You're just enjoying it, and hopefully finding great angles and being contributing member to like what the DP and director are doing. But the assistant is making sure that your camera is operating properly, that it's doing what you need it to do, and that it's in focus wherever they point the camera, you know. And so yeah, so I got to do all of that, and it made I stood out because of it, because
Mm.
there's not that many women who look like me doing it.
Hmm. So early on, that we're going to move forward a little bit. You become a DP, but you were discouraged from pursuing a career as a cinematographer because you didn't look like the normal cinematographer. I heard you talk about the fact that you're kind of short. You're not 6'5", you're not 250 pounds full of muscle. So a lot of the people in the industry in that particular craft kind of discouraged you and hey, go be a producer, go be an actor, go be a writer. What made you say, you know what, I'm sticking to my guns, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm built for?
You know, I I grew up in New York. I'm the eldest sister of like three boys, and my brothers to this day give me a hard time. Like it's just the thing that guys do, like busting each other's chops and all that stuff. So I'm used to kind of aggressive, sort of in your face. And I think also being a New Yorker, I'm used to the aggressiveness of communication. And unfortunately, a man always challenging you. And it doesn't matter if they're white or if they're black or Latino or Asian, like men are gonna men. And that's what they were doing to me at the beginning of my career. And still, like I still get it a lot too. Um, And it's just one of those things where it's just like, you know how they say, don't take things personally, you got to have a thick skin and all that stuff. It really is true for this line of work, probably for every line of work. For, you know, the way that I think our country raises women is to have certain sensibilities that when we're in an environment where those sensibilities are being offended, it's hard to adjust, and it's hard to grow those things that you need to sort of survive through that. There were definitely moments where I needed to take a step back for my own, like, mental health, emotional health, or what, because it was just like, you just get tired of fighting all the time. You get tired of trying to be strong. You get tired of, and like when I entered the industry, it was at a time when women were pressured to be very masculine, you know? The guys all dressed in like cargo pants and t-shirts and looking like they were roughed up, and there's just like the gruff of a man, and it's just like, and if you were a girl, it's just like anything girly about you was like a negative standout. And I think one day, like, I just got tired. It felt like a burden. It felt oppressive. I was just like, I can't take this anymore. And I just started, like, I like collar shirts. I'm wearing one now. It's just like, I like collar shirts. I like being somewhat presentable in like a professional sense, but still like where I can move and get down and dirty and not worry about what I'm wearing, like, that's too nice getting ruined. And so I started doing my nails. I started, like, wearing a little bit of lipstick and things like that. That it was just like, I started kind of just getting back to who I was in all of it. And I think not sacrificing who I am. I stopped caring about what people thought about me. And when I stopped caring, it was like a weight was lifted. And the unexpected thing was people actually liked me. And I was just like, oh. So they were just like, oh, there you are. So it wasn't, there was a two-sided thing of feeling this energy and feeling discouraged to be me. But then also, I think sometimes, especially as women and Black people or Latinos, like, you sort of put the burden on yourself too. There's like these self-created prisons that we make. And I realized, like, oh, I'm also limiting myself when I'm doing this. And it's a creative field. The more I was myself, the more it was celebrated. And so it ended up, it's still working itself out, but those are the things that I've been learning along the way.
Oh, so that's amazing. So let's talk about the importance of the relationship between the director and the DP,
Mm.
and how important that relationship actually is, and the communication that up she went out again. Up she's back.
I lost you again and your sound somewhere in there. I don't know what
Okay.
is going on. I'm going to reload this
We
again.
doing it. We doing it, ladies and gentlemen. It's an interesting, and I'm going to ask her that question when she comes back in. Little boozy Bert, thank you so much for being patient, and whoever else is here, thank you for your patience. But I'm going to ask that question again. This is an interesting. This is an interesting episode,
Of
but that is
course, of course.
it would be with the cinematographer and all of that. Oh my
Right. All
gosh.
the technical issues.
But it's all good. It's all good. But again, the importance of the relationship between the director and the DP, and the communication that needs to happen in order for that thing to work.
So it's interesting. For one of I think my second short film, it was called Compassionate Release. I was en route to New York, and I was asked if I would be interested to shoot this short that they're pitching my name to this director. And I was the only woman on the list submitted, right? She was a female director, and she was just like, hey, a woman? I need to check her out. And she just hired me off of that, right? We didn't really know each other at all, didn't anything. And it was one of those situations of like, I fired my other DP because it was a dude and it was not working. and I'm hoping that you can do something with this, and we're going to shoot in 2 days. And it was like a 25 page script, something like that. And I was just like, this is a lot to do. I barely had time to prep. Didn't have really much time to prep. But it was like, I had a conversation with her. I read the script. And I think for me, at the level I'm at right now, I'm working with a lot of like director writers. And so, um, most of them have been Black women. And because they're writing these stories, I read them just with like a reverence, like I really treat the script. This is our source material. This is what we're working off of and building on. This is the foundation. My mom was a writer, and she was always like, got us books. She worked. She was a publicist for many years at the New York City Library. So it was like things like that. Books were just a big thing in my childhood. And so when I read these scripts, I get lost in them. I literally deep dive into the world that they've created. I look for what works. I think about the images that come to my mind immediately as I'm reading it. And I write those raw ideas down. And I ask about them. Hey, this is the way I saw it. And I kind of pull references from films or moments that it reminds me of, and give those things to kind of trade. And it's something that they really appreciate because it's like I'm giving them something tangible and not just talking about it. Or this is just like, hey, especially when I'm on a 2-day prep timeline, I want to make sure that I'm getting as much as I can, like out of the story that you're telling. And if I'm hitting the right tone and I like to listen to music a lot, and music is like my first love with a lot of things. And so when I'm reading these scripts, I think about beats, I think about pace, I think about what 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 is the pace that these words are dancing to, and what's the best way to capture that, you know um ballroom dancing, like the cha-cha is very different from salsa, even though they're very similar. And like, what are, like, so I can't be doing salsa while the script is doing cha-cha. We can't have missteps like that. And knowing how to move in sync with the flow of the script is what I try to get into. And so I think when they see that, they feel it, because you feel music, right? And so that's what I feel like filmmaking is a lot like. I think it's a lot of times people look at paintings and they look like they look at other art, but I like to listen to art. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
Makes a lot of sense.
that's the way my brain processes a script when I read it. And the directors I've worked with they're dancing with me too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because some of the greatest jazz musicians, they were making art.
Yeah.
When you listen to a Thelonious Monk or a Miles Davis, that was an art form. Or
Right.
a Herbie Hancock. That's or a piece that oh my gosh, Quincy Jones put together. That was a piece of art.
Yeah.
That's elevation. Oh, that's amazing. So when we first started the show, I talked about the fact that you are only a handful of women and women of color in the business as far as cinematographers go. So, what do you feel your role and, frankly, your responsibility is with having something that important on you?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of times I think it's one of the things that people don't think about. But a lot of what it is to be a union member, at least to me, is the quote unquote brotherhood of what it is to be a union member. Brotherhood, sisterhood, brethren. Who this is supposed to be your professional family, and we we put our hands on our chest and we take oaths, when we do this, like just like the doctor does. And and so it's one of those things that I'm a big sister, like I said. I'm also one of the older cousins of my family. And so um at least as far as my generation of the family, like a lot is on my shoulders to get my cousins together so we spend time and we feel like a family. And so I take all of that very seriously. And I think I've always wanted to, when I was in AC and there was somebody who was fascinated seeing me on set, I'd have PAs come up to me and say, I see what you're doing, and I've always wanted to do it, but I didn't think it was available to me. Like, I'd love to learn if you know anything. And so whenever I got a job and I had a checkout at a rental house, I would call people to join me who I knew were interested in camera, say, hey, why don't you come? And I think you'll like this. This is a camera I know you've never seen before. This is how you build it for set. This is what a studio build for a camera. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like when it's in Steadicam mode. This is what it looks like when we put it in a remote head. Like, these are the tools that you need. This is how you break it down to do this stuff, like everything, and being able to show them. And then when I moved to LA, everything is just bigger. There's more space. There's a lot of gear. There's a lot of people who know it. So it's just like I would call up friends who had gear and say, hey, like, now I know a lot of women who are asking me, for advice and tips and all this stuff. And instead of taking one person to a checkout with me, why don't we just have a day? Because we've got the space, you've got the gear. Let's just invite all these women to train. And so I put a call out for, at that point, it was just for Black and Afro-Latina women to learn how to do this camera without feeling like the pressure of, boys around or any white people around, or, like feeling that weirdness that sometimes exists in camera culture. It could be very antagonistic, and just creating a safe space for these beautiful Black girls to come together and learn. And 40 women showed up. Over 40 women showed up to the first one. And then we did another one and even more came. And I made these free events for the community. And because of it being a free event, and it was like, it just made waves and it splashed in LA. I did another one in New York that was, it was co-ed. It was for Black History Month at Aerie in Queens. It was their first event at their new facility. And so, because of these events that I basically just did on my own and will call up like Sony or other like camera companies to be sponsors, they believed in it and they invested in the Black community and teaching these kids who were all so excited about it. And because of that work, Local 600 asked me to start to become the chairwoman of a women's committee that they never had out in the West Coast. And so right now I asked my friend to co-chair with me, but right now I'm co-chair of the women's committee for Local 600 in LA. And yeah, and so I didn't think that me taking on the responsibility of teaching the next generation, I can't complain about women not knowing camera and then not train the women that look like me in camera. I know I never had it. I had to seek it out, and there was not many women who looked like me doing it that I knew. Like, I think it's just non-existent. It's so rare, and the women that I did see who were older than me, I was just amazed by them because I can't believe what they had gone through themselves, and so I got to know those women and they mentor me today. So yeah, so we're out here in very small numbers, but it's a lot better than even 10 years ago.
Wow. Well, as they say, Rome was not built in a day,
Mm-hmm.
built rather. And, anything worth building or worth having, it's going to take time. And,
Mm-hmm.
it just has to get to a point where people are talking about you in the room all the time. And again, as I said earlier, when, I just put in DP on Instagram and you popped up. And that's, it's kind of sad because of the fact that there aren't as many as there should be. But in a way, it's good because you guys get to build it the way you want to build it, as opposed to someone else telling you how it should be. You and those other phenomenal women get to build this thing the way it should be built, that it can be advantageous to you and other women of color, actually, doing some absolutely amazing things in the business. But before we go on, I have to ask you, do you know Cheryl Bedford of the JTC list
I
and
do.
Women of Color Unite? Okay, so when then
I do.
I don't need to
But
see.
speaking of that,
Mhm.
before I forget, you touched on something that I really like, that is like we can make this into whatever we like it to be because there's so few of us. And there are, I think in Local 600, it's it's a national union of nearly 11,000 members. And there's about 100 Black women in Local 600 across all classifications,
Mm.
and so we actually have a group called 600 Black Women. um, and you could follow on Instagram and I think on Facebook. And for whoever is a Black woman interested in joining 600 one day, we have a mentorship group. So if you go to the Instagram page, there's a form, and we can ingest you and get you plugged in with other women in your region, in your state, wherever you are. We've got our wonderful ladies all over the country and in different parts of the world who are killing it in camera, and a lot of people don't know that we exist.
Well, they will after today because we gonna get this thing popping. Because there's no reason, because you know what? Oftentimes the excuse is, and this is something that Cheryl, when I started dealing with Cheryl, and because I'm a mentor for Start with Hate, and actually
Mhm.
I'm actually getting together the second group of mentees that I'm going to be mentoring. But the one thing she said that a lot of people in Hollywood would say is, we can't find them.
They're
And
not
she,
looking.
right. And she was like, y'all ain't looking. So guess what? I'm gonna do it for you. And I'm gonna compile this list so that you can never have the excuse of, well, I don't know what they are. Well, here's the list. So what you're doing with 600 women and those other 100 phenomenal women in the union is amazing, because they can't use the excuse that they don't know you don't exist.
Yeah,
They
we were on Good Morning America too. You guys are
Come on
trying
now.
to ignore us if that's
Come
the
on now.
case. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
oh, I wasn't watching Good Morning America on that day. Yeah, okay, yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Okay. So the difference between working on a feature film with a major studio and working on an indie film, what are some of the differences that you've encountered?
um, I think indies are just more fun. You
Mm,
have a lot of people think that when you work on like these big studio productions, $100 million, like the more money you get, the more freedom you have. It's not true. More money, more problems. We know this saying already. So it's just because of all of the money being invested into whatever given project, there's more pressure for it to succeed. And so the studios will have their hands all over the creative process every step of the way. In some cases, I've been on some shows where the studios are saying, the DP ends up mostly on one lens. They end up finding a lens that just works for most of the shots that they're doing. And sometimes, they're looking at the camera reports where they see, the 50 again, we only use the 50 all day. And then they start saying, hey, you got to start using other lenses. This isn't, so it's just like, okay, just put 85, even though it's still a 50, and we'll just kind of fudge the camera reports, because you'll have an executive coming down and say, what are you doing? Who they think they know. It's like, does the image look good? Yeah. Do you like what you're getting? Yeah. So what's the problem? But in their head, it's just whatever given inkling they want to communicate. It's just you're impeding the process. So when you're on an indie film, you don't have those pressures. It's really the people who are there for the passion of the project and really want to get it done. And it's one of those things that you just have more freedom. Yeah, you don't have as much money on that, but you kind of get to do what you want, almost, not all the time, but a lot more. And yeah, I think indies are fun, but
Okay.
I like the
Hmm.
money of the big budget studios.
I know
So
that's right. So we're going to balance this out. I'm going to do this big budget, but then I'm going to do this indie.
yeah, you could do commercial work. You could do the boring television procedural show. You do that anywhere from like 4 to 8 months out of the year. But then the other few months that you have off, you can do the fun passion projects. So there's a balance to everything. Listen, there's not, a studio production, a major motion film is about as corporate as we get in our
Mhm.
industry, and we have a lot of flexibility. So it's just, you take the bad with the good, and you just make the most of the hand that you're given.
So let's talk a little bit about the importance of being prepared on a set. Because I was listening to an interview and you were talking about David Finch and you were also talking about Spike Lee and the both of them knowing all aspects and everybody's job. So can you talk about the importance of being prepared? Because as you said, when you're on the largest sets, it's more of a corporate thing because when you have $100 million budget, they ain't trying to have their money wasted, and wasted time is wasted money. So can you talk
Mm-hmm.
about the importance of being prepared on a film set, and not just for cinematographers, but for anyone stepping foot on a film set, especially us?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Nobody's catching you lacking in any of that. So it's that same principle, It's the art is in the prep, you know? That's where you're finding the vision. That's where you're planning the shots. That's when you are just preparing so much so that you can create, a shot list. And everything that you're doing is literally you're pulling what your imagination is feeding you on, and you're trying to get that onto a page. That process itself is so difficult because it's what are the words that you use for this spinning thing you want to do. Well, no, you're talking not, is it spinning, is it circular, is it a revolution, is it tumbling, is what is it, so there's all these different words to specify all of the different things in the depth of your mind, and trying to figure that out, reading someone else's words and making sure that is what I'm thinking, what you were trying to do, is what I'm feeling, what you wanted me to feel, you know? And how do I tell you a story visually? It's that process. And so breaking down the script, making sure you and the director are sharing the same visual language. Can you watch this with the sound off and still understand what's happening in the story? You know, it's those types of things that you do in the prep so that by the time you see it live and direct on the day, you see, oh, these actors are acting a little bit differently than I imagined when I was reading this. These actors are moving in the space differently in a way that I did not imagine. But you're so prepared that, and you have such a grip of what the tone of the scene is supposed to be, that when you see it acted out differently than what you imagined, you have to be ready to scrap what you plan to shoot and say, okay, I see a better angle to capture this in. You know, you have the shot list as a brace, as a foundation for what you're going, what your plan is. But then when you see it, that's when you work it out and you tighten it up and you realize, okay, what I thought we were gonna do, I don't think it applies as much, or this part of what I was imagining works, but this other stuff doesn't. And I think we could get it more efficient, more effectively and efficiently this other way. And it's all like you're planning right there at the rehearsal. So, yeah.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. So we have some viewers, live viewers on YouTube, and producer Wendell Dean asked a question concerning prep. And he wanted to know if you've incorporated using AI in any of your processes.
I haven't yet. I know people who have, and I know directors and producers who use AI in their pitch decks to studios. Um, but me personally, I haven't had. I'm a little resistant to the whole AI thing. I for me, I have a lot of fun in the process of it all, you know. So it's just like it's kind of like the difference between typing something out and writing it by hand being more seared into your memory, you know. So I think that for me, um, I'm not gonna fix something that ain't broke. So I don't really need AI for now, you know, and I don't really see how I would use it at this juncture. Maybe in the future I will, but right now I don't really need it.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about relationships because that is such an important part of this industry. So building and maintaining relationships, how important has that been for you on your journey?
Um, I mean, it's all about who you know, and I've always been I've always been friendly and respectful to
Mm,
people, you know. So I I go to parties, I go to networking events, I go to mixers, and I think the thing that first really kind of got me onto that was going to Sundance. Um, I was I was like just hanging out one time. It was a very, very cold night in New York. And I was just like, well, I think I was scrolling Instagram and it said, why aren't you at Sundance? And I was just like, oh, I could never do that. One day. And I was just like, why do I why do I do that? Why am I treating going to another American city like some dream or impossibility? Hop on a plane right now and go there. Do I need a project? I mean, that's what I was hoping to be there for. But why don't I just go and check it out? And when I did, I had an amazing time. I met other filmmakers who didn't have projects out, who were all wanting to build their teams. And that was the first time I realized the benefits of going to a film festival, going to a mixer, going to something like that. You know, I think in New York, everybody is kind of like rushing around, and maybe they go to these parties. They can be really stuffy and really sort of like you feel like an outsider, you know. So I was really never into that, but there was just different groups of people from all over the country and all over the world who were at Sundance, and everybody was excited and eager to meet someone new. And oh, what do you do? And like everybody was like weirdly fascinated with my experience. And I was just like, and it made me realize here I am again downplaying myself and not uplifting myself, where everybody is seeing everybody's like they're joyous when they hear like what projects I've been on or who I know, or we end up having like all these different friends in common. And so yeah, networking with people was what allowed me to have a springboard in LA when I moved there. It's what, you know, it's just what got me connected to international producers and DPs. Because it was like, oh, you know somebody and you're so great. I had PAs recommend me for jobs because I was nice to them on set. You know, it's things like that that when you show people that I think when you're just good people, you know good stories, you know good. I think good things just happen. So yeah, it ended up it's been nice. I have nice little gang of friends now in LA. I never thought I was gonna have. So
But that's amazing, and it's so interesting that you say, how we downplay ourselves because gentleman in the chat, producer Windowsine, he was like, "Oh my gosh, she's worked on Nurse Jackie and she's worked on House of Cards and those are his shows." So he's like, "I'm so glad
yeah,
you're talking to her." So it's we do that to ourselves. You know, we the bomb. I guess it's kind of where you don't want to seem as if you're being cocky or arrogant or anything like that. But your
yeah,
accomplishments are your accomplishments, and you worked hard for those, and no one can take them from you. But I understand what you're saying because sometimes you may run across that person, and they talk about themselves ad nauseum. You're like, "Yo, give it a rest. Somebody else is in the room."
well,
So I
nobody
get
wants
it.
to talk to the person being like me, 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 me. Like nobody wants to do that. But I think when you're just sort of matter of fact about
Hmm.
what you do, and when people are asking me questions, and you just give straight answers and you don't do all the fluff, or like, so when I was talking with Oprah, it's just like, okay, chill out. It's just like, oh,
Yeah,
when I worked on this project, it was great, everybody's wardrobe was beautiful, and because it's the color purple, everybody had this rich purple wardrobe. And then, but I'm not saying any names when I say that. I'm talking about the actual process of capturing these things that fascinated me, and it was beautiful and it was exciting because things that I didn't expect to happen, and we caught it on camera. And that's, as long as I got a great shot, I'm so happy, and that's what gets me thrilled. Or somebody will say, "Oh, well, what are you talking about? Can I see?" And you show them, and it ends up being this project or the celebrity that they're just like, "Oh my god!" But I didn't lead with that. I led with the work. And I think for me, that's what the difference is
yeah,
between bragging and talking about the job that you love.
yeah. And I've been in some spaces, and that's the first thing they lead with is a name, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Really? Seriously?
This
Okay."
ain't my resume. We ain't doing all that
Right.
now.
So this has been absolutely phenomenal. So I only have a couple more questions for you. Um, what are 5 things that you would tell your younger self just coming into the business? And what advice would you give to any young woman of color or any young woman who decides that cinematography is the path for them?
um, it's not easy. It's not easy. Um, but if you're committed, if you are smart in how you move and who you connect with, it's it's really making like decisive decisions, like things that um will have a greater effect for you down the line. At the beginning of my career, when I was still a PA, I was offered a job at Aerie, being a prep tech, working with the cameras, making like $9 an hour. Or I could be an assistant locations manager for the first season of Celebrity Apprentice, making $30 an hour, which at the time was like, whoa. And I remember thinking, this was before Trump was ever thinking about president or anything. They were like, Cyndi Lauper's gonna be on. Don't you want to come? But I knew I wanted to be in camera. For me, it wasn't about the money. So I think that if you're able to do things that nurture the things that bring you joy, the things that bring you knowledge, the things that are sort of feeding you, I think it helps when it gets hard. Those are the things that help you get over the hard times. Um, yeah, I like money just as much as the next person, but sometimes it's not always about that. It's about the connection. It's about the project. It's about, you know, um, the potential for the conversations and the opportunities that when this movie comes out, how will it impact people, and yeah, I think those are the things that have fed the decisions that I've made that have turned out to work out so far.
This was an absolutely amazing conversation, even with all the hiccups, which just added a little spice and flavor to the
We can
conversation.
stay on for a little longer too because of the hiccups. I'm so sorry, everybody.
No, no, no,
My
no,
iPad,
no.
my laptop crapped out right before we started, so we're doing the
But
best we can here.
we are doing the best we can. Okay, well, let's chop it up for a little bit longer. So so how did you get some of the shows? Because as Wendell said, Nurse Jackie, House of Cards. How did those jobs come about?
It's again, when you get to a certain point that so for me, as soon as I graduated college, like all of my classmates were just like, yeah, we're gonna support each other and making short films, we're gonna do this thing and we're gonna make stuff. I was just like, okay, so what are we gonna do when we make this stuff? They were just like, are we gonna go to festivals with it? Are we gonna this? Are we gonna that? They were just like, what? We're just gonna screen it in our living rooms and show each other it, And I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. So I'm just like, I'm a woman in camera. I'm a short black Latina woman in camera. I need to have everything in my deck that will give me wins, And so I need to not just know how to make pretty pictures, but I need to be in the union because I know that if I'm union level, no one will question my skill or my knowledge. What I didn't know was how small the camera community in New York is. And the fact that I was union and a loader, your name just gets around. Oh, we have an additional camera. We have 3 additional cameras. We need to hire another loader to help our person out. Oh, our loader wants to go on vacation. Let's call around. There's only so many people who are union level, who are good at their job, who can do that, And I just became good at my job and my name started to get ahead of me, like it's word of mouth. It's just like, hey, I need somebody for this project. Are you available? No, I'm not available, but Michelle is. And so giving my name, and it's people passing my name along and getting hired onto these things and going on to day play and then killing it and then being like, you know what, we're going to call you again and again and again. And then now I'm part of this crew and they work on all of these types of shows with all of this with this network's roster of shows. So now I'm working like CBS jobs back to back to back. And one day I did a commercial with this person who does a bunch of HBO stuff. And now I'm in the HBO track. And so before you know it, you start meeting people along the way. And because I lived in New Orleans also, like when I joined the union in 2011, I left and I moved to New Orleans and worked on some movies down there. It was really busy at the time. And I was there for about 3.5 years. So I never got stuck with a crew in New York. I was bouncing around. I was day playing all the time. And people assumed that I had a lot more skill than I actually had. So it was just like, instead of spending 5 years as a loader, I was 2 years as a loader. And then I moved up to second AC pretty quickly because people just assumed if she's traveling back and forth, that means she's got this thing. And it was just like, I don't. Somebody train me, help. But having to now pay attention extra hard at work because I'm doing things that I've never had an opportunity to do before. And I don't want to make a mistake, and learning on the job, that's really just how it was. And being so attentive that I ended up doing the right things in really clutch moments that people were like, you know what, you're good, and would pass my name along to their friends. No one's going to recommend you if they think you're not good at what you do. So before I knew it, I was in. It was over 10 years. I knew a lot of people in a lot of places. And I was able to hire a lot of people in a lot of places. And so that recycled goodwill across every time people shared my name. It was like with affection, with respect, and I've just been honestly surprised and honored by it all.
Hmm. So the question was asked, what doors did your Tribeca win open being early in your career? What did getting into the
None.
could you that was pretty
Listen, honey,
emphatic.
I don't pay attention to awards. I don't pay attention to any of those things. You know, like people will get excited for a moment and then you keep it moving. They're nice accolades to have, but it's just like unless it's transferring to tangible things, like it's the intangibles. It's just something that raises people's esteem for me. It raises their like, oh, maybe she knows what she's talking about. But it's like in the grand scheme of things, for the real like studio decision makers, stuff like that, it's just like to them it's like a so what, you know? So it's just like, but on the indie level, you know, it has been something that creatives see as like a plus for me, you know? So it's sort of just depending what circle um is talking about it.
Hmm. So let's talk about you being one of the only people of color on set, being a woman. And have you ever run into the situation where we've come on a set and you've had to pull them aside because maybe they're not conducting themselves in a professional manner? Have you ever had that situation happen where you had to pull someone aside and have, a talk with them, like this is how you conduct yourself on the set, this is what what you should and should not do? Have you ever had to have that discussion?
No,
Oh, that's great.
I wanted to. um if I'm on a set with somebody that I know has less experience than me, the only thing I ask of them is that they're honest with me with the level of inexperience, because then I
Mhm.
know how to navigate around your lack of knowledge. And if it's the appropriate project for me to be able to train you on, because there's just a thing where you really only learn the stuff you need to know on set. Everything else before that is just practice, but you really don't know how you're going to perform on game day until it's game day, you know? So it's just one of those things. And if I have come across people who behave inappropriately, unprofessionally, or whatever, we're all grown. I'm not your babysitter. You did that on purpose. So I see where you're at with it and I opt out of this behavior. You know, I don't have time for that. So now there have been times I've been caught up and I'm just flustered or I don't know what to do, or it's been one of those things, but I've always taken those opportunities. I've always taken those things as opportunities to learn and how to, you know, in what ways will I shut this down in the future? You know, what are the tools I have on deck for that? But that's all like interpersonal politics, and that's what I, you know, chalk it up to. But yeah, I'm not your mama.
So you better come to set of acting,
You better
handling your
act
business and acting like you
professional.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had people who've gotten a little bit too comfortable because they just see me as like their homegirl. It's like
Hmm.
I'm nice, but I'm not that nice, you know. Like I'm professional nice, but
Right.
why you want to hug me first thing in the morning? Like back up a little bit. I need my coffee. Like I don't know you. I just met you 2 days ago. You get too
Right.
comfortable. So it's things like that that it's just like I'll check it in the moment if I feel like my boundaries are being crossed in any
Mhm.
ways. But other than that, you need to trip over yourself. Like leave me alone.
You'll be okay. Get up and dust yourself off. So what are you working on now?
Well, I just finished shooting a music video. Um, This woman, Celeste O'Connor, and her co-director Mecca, we shot a short film last year called Liminality that's been doing really well on the film festival circuit that it's currently on. Um, and I just happened to be in New York visiting my family when they texted me and were just like, "Hey, we have a tiny budget for a music video, and we wonder if you have anybody you recommend." And I was just like, "Well, I'm in town. If you still want to work with me, I'm available." And so we did that. And it was my first music video that I shot. I've worked on music videos before, but I had been wanting to shoot one for some time because I see music videos as like abstract art. You know, you don't need to follow, the continuity of the scene. There's no lines. You can do whatever you want. You can shoot it. You can have the image obstructed. You can do whatever you want. And I just had a lot of fun with like distorting the lens and doing all that stuff. And then when I get back to LA, I'm going to work on a couple of commercials with my female DP friends. I'm going to be their camera operator. And so with Erin Wesley and with Christina Dunlap. And she was the DP for American Fiction. And so it's just like, I have a great circle of women who are doing great things, and we all support each other. And so they call me for advice or they call me to hire me, and I'm always just really glad to be a part of that. So yeah.
Okay, great. So last question, little boozy bird, I hope I'm saying that right. Asks, do you have a favorite camera lens series rather, or other tools that's your right hand man besides your eyes?
I love the Arri cameras. I might be partial because I started my career with them, but I chose them as the rental house I wanted to work with because I love their cameras. So whether my favorite camera of all time is the Arri 416, it's a 60 millimeter camera, and it's beautiful. And it came out maybe 2 years or so before the Alexa came out, and but I love that camera, And then the Alexa is great. I love the Alexa Mini. I think Arri 35. I worked with that recently, and it's a great camera. I just love it. Sony has a really great sensor on their cameras, but I don't really like the body or the menu system. And they've been getting better at it, like with the new Burano and with the other camera that they have. But I love the Arri cameras. And then as far as lenses go, some Cooke S4s. Oh my God. I love the Cooke S4s. Some Optimo zooms, some Zeiss super speeds, B series, I think is it. And then I love in front of the lens, I really love filters, and I love I love adding to any kit. What is it? A diopter. It's like a magnifying glass in front of the lens, and you could do super tight close-ups with that without breaking bank, So it's just like anytime you could add a diopter, it's like adding another lens to your kit without the lens price. So that's my cheat when I don't have the budget. I just add some different diopters to maybe a set of 2 or 3 lenses, and it's like having a set of 8 lenses at that point. So.
Okay, well, I hope that answers your question. I am not a camera person, so you were speaking French. Then I'm gonna have to listen to this again and then go look that stuff up.
Yeah, I was drifting off.
That's okay, because you know what? I always like to learn new things, and there's actually this cinematography book. I can't remember the name of it that I wanted to buy. It's like over $100. So I can't remember the name of it, but I just like to know. I've never I've never done cinematography. I've never picked up a camera in that fashion. But again, I want to know. Well, yeah. Well, then you know what? Then I pick it up all the time because I'm always on this daggone thing. My wife like, you need to put it down.
I just bought actually some diopters for the iPhone too.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
it's just like, having a macro lens on my thing. And it's just like, I didn't even know that they made it like that. I've seen little lenses for it, but
Mhm.
a diopter, I was like, oh, this is a new game right now. So I'm waiting for that to come in.
Okay. Well, I guess I am sort of a cinematographer because I am on that thing all
Didn't
the
even know it.
time. Nope. See, there you go. I learned something again. I'm thinking I'm just making content, not knowing that I'm a
I
mini
honestly,
cinematographer,
I
cinematographer.
tell people all the time, the camera doesn't matter. For me, it's the lenses. The camera
Mhm.
is just a box with a hole in it, and you just put a lens in front of it and you make it work. But if you know framing, if you know composition, that is 75% of the job.
Okay.
Even the audience doesn't care about how high def it is. I think we're a lot more forgiving now when the image isn't completely perfect. um yeah, you got a camera in your pocket, didn't even know
Yeah.
it.
And I tell filmmakers that all the time. Stop thinking you got to go rent a red or black magic and everything. Use what you have, folks. Because sometimes filmmakers say, "Well, what kind of camera should I use?" I'm like, the one that works.
Yeah,
Use the one that works.
yeah, I'm not going to use an Alexa 35
Mhm,
for something that's going to end up on Instagram. Now, if it's going to be a big movie screen, yeah, I care about what camera I'm using. But if the
mhm,
destination is YouTube, if it's Instagram or the socials, you can have a DSLR camera, and it doesn't. They all shoot 4K now, so it's
mhm.
just like, yeah, that's the easiest choice in a lot of instances.
Well, Michelle, this has been absolutely amazing. I am so
Yay!
glad that I reached out to you. So, where can people find you on social media? Because we got to get folks following you. Where can people find you?
Oh man, you can reach me on Cinementine Instagram. That's CINEMENTINE. That's honestly like the only. I don't have a Facebook or anything. I'm pretty good with the DMs on Instagram whenever people reach out to me and ask me questions. So there's also 600 Black women. Please support the page. And if you're a Black woman interested in camera, get connected with us. You'll find mentors, you'll find a community of women in camera who look just like you and will give you the love and support and encouragement that I definitely did not have when I started my career. So, y'all lucky.
Yeah, because you have resources like Michelle and all of the fabulous women that she's connected to. So please make sure that you divest yourself of these resources. They are there. They want to help. Do not sleep on that because there is nothing like having knowledge. And there's nothing like having knowledge from people who truly want to see you win. So, again, Michelle, thank you so much for joining me on a
Thank you,
conversation
Floyd.
with. Thank you so much. And, ladies and gentlemen, again, make sure you follow the YouTube channel. Follow us on social media because I'm going to keep bringing you dope ass creators like the one that is sitting in front of me. This was so much fun. Uh, the technical difficulties definitely added some spice to it. So that was absolutely great. That was
Some points,
absolutely
right?
great. Yes, yes. Well, you know what? It showed people that even the best laid plans sometimes go awry. So you have to be flexible and you have to learn how to think on your feet, especially in this business. You definitely you can attest to this being a DP on a film set where things have gone wrong, that camera didn't work or the lens cracked or something like that, and you kind of had to dip and
Yeah.
dive.
My battery that said it was full actually only works for 2 seconds and then it shut down the camera mid shot. Oh, okay. We just swap it out. Like, you work with it, you roll with it, keep the show going.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining myself and the amazing Michelle Clementine, award winning cinematographer, and all that other good stuff. And again, as I end every show, ladies and gentlemen, love it like a hobby, but treat it like a business. And on that note, Have an absolutely amazing, amazing night. Peace.